So make sure you're watching this video so you can find out how you can grab this free SVG design to make on all your projects. So let's go get started. Weeding vinyl can be frustrating, particularly with people who have bad eyesight or problems with their hands, or for anyone who just really doesn't have the patience to sit there and weed out each individual piece of their designs. Hopefully, I can provide some tips to help make the weeding process a little bit easier for you. Hi guys, it's Michelle from My Craft Source. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, make sure you're subscribing and ringing the bell so you can get notifications as we post them. One of my favorite vinyls to weed is heat transfer vinyl, or you may call it iron-on vinyl. It has a carrier sheet applied to it already, so that makes it a lot easier when trying to piece together your design. It also means that it doesn't require the use of transfer tape, which I don't know about you, using that transfer tape is a pain sometimes. How about you? Do you have a preference when weeding? Do you prefer adhesive vinyl or heat transfer vinyl when trying to weed? Drop me a comment below so I can see what your favorite is to weed. These tips will help you weed vinyl no matter which type it is, because sometimes we just can't weed what we want, right? So what is weeding anyways? Let's get a little technical here. It's that big step between cutting your vinyl and applying your vinyl. It's probably the most time-consuming and frustrating part of the whole process. When weeding vinyl, you're actually removing the excess vinyl that we don't want to be on our designs in the end. Typically, you use a special tool called a weeder or a weeding pin, and sometimes you can just use your fingers to remove the vinyl, depending on how intricate your design might be. So here I laid out a few of the tools that you might find yourself using when weeding vinyl. So I have a pair of tweezers. These can be handy when you have a piece of vinyl that's been misplaced on your design and you need to use the tweezers to sort of grab it off of there. You could use a weeding knife. This is great to help you cut any miscuts that may have occurred from your cutter. So maybe you have some words, maybe like a script font, that maybe your blade skipped on a little piece of it, and so when you're trying to weed away the vinyl, it peels that up a little bit. So you could take your weeding knife and cut that little connective space there to kind of guide your weeding along so it's not pulling up the stuff that you want to stay on your carrier sheet. You may also have a tool that's called a hook weeder. This can be useful for larger designs, things that are a little less intricate. So this is probably the go-to tool for most people, but I'm going to show you what my favorite tool to use when weeding. I like to use this pin tool. It's got a retractable needle point tip that can be used for super intricate designs. And if you kind of poke the little corner of your design and pull it up, it doesn't leave a big hole or wrinkle in your vinyl. So that's one of the great things about this pin tool. And this is really my go-to, and I use this for everything. But you might find that you have a few options that you like to use in your tool bag. Another thing is scissors. We always want to have a pair of scissors around because it's just so helpful to cut away excess vinyl before you weed. So let's keep talking about some tips that we can follow to help us along with the weeding process. So one of the first things that I like to recommend when weeding is to use a weeding box. I have cut a few designs, one without a weeding box and one with a weeding box. So that way we can kind of compare how much easier it is to weed these smaller designs from this large piece of vinyl by using a weeding box. So I'll bring you a little closer and you can check that out. This little line here, see how I bent that? That is the weeding box that is around the perimeter of my design that I'm going to be weeding. So this is a little trick I like to use too. If I can't seem to find my cuts anywhere on my vinyl, I just bend my vinyl a little bit and it helps to reveal where my cut lines are. I kind of just bend it like this and you can see right here where it bends up just a little bit to show us where it's at. So let me show you how easy it is to weed using a weeding box. So I just start at the corner of my weeding box, get it started, and I just pull away the excess vinyl. So that makes it super easy. So now I can see where I need to go back with my scissors to trim away the excess vinyl that I don't need to use. The second thing is find a weeder that works best for you. So as I suggested before, my favorite weeder is the pin weeding tool. So that's my go-to, and that's the one I just grab every time I'm going to go weed. The next thing that I would recommend for you is to weed away excess vinyl. There's no reason to weed away this whole sheet of vinyl when I only have a small intricate piece here that I want to keep. So I like to grab my scissors and just trim away what excess vinyl I'm not going to use when I'm weeding. This is going to make my job so much more manageable. So on this example, I've got a design that takes up this whole, almost this whole sheet of vinyl. And this is a big piece of vinyl, so I'm just going to use my scissors to trim away anywhere that I can see some excess that I don't want to have to deal with when I'm weeding away. So the scissors are helpful for that, getting rid of all that excess. Something else that can be helpful is just print your design out on regular printer paper. Sometimes we just get so overwhelmed with what it is we're weeding on our design. You might look at something and be like, well, what am I even weeding here? That's where a reference sheet of your printed design can help you out. Especially when you're using glitter heat transfer vinyl, sometimes it's really hard to find those cut lines. So if you have a reference sheet to go off of, you can compare it to where your lines should be when looking for your cut lines. So that's a helpful trick as well. Once you've been doing it for a while and get more adjusted to your cuts, you might not need to use that reference anymore. So I mean, I'm at that point where I don't really need that printed reference anymore, but in the beginning it was great to have that, so I knew what am I removing off my carrier sheet, what am I keeping. It really helped clarify which part of the design needs to stay and which part of the design needs to go. Something else that might be helpful is to use a bright pad. That's a light device, or like a shadow box that you would sit your vinyl over top of and weed with. So the light would help you to see your cut lines a little more clearly. Something else that could help if you don't have access to a bright pad is just to weed your light materials on a dark surface. Or if you have dark materials, weed them on a light surface. So that's going to help when you're weeding away to see the contrast of what vinyl is being removed. Also, it's great to use good light. If you have a headlamp and don't mind looking silly for a little bit, no, you won't look silly. It'll help you out tremendously. My husband wears them all the time, and I do make fun of him a little bit, but that's okay. I have the right to make fun of a husband, right? So if you wear a headlight or have an extra desk light to shine on your project while you're working, it's really going to help you see the cut lines on your design. So that little bit of a reflection that good lighting is going to provide will allow you to see a break in the surface, which is where your cut line is at. So our next tip is always start in the upper left corner of your design if you are right-handed. If you're left-handed, then you're going to start in the right-hand corner. That's so as you're weeding, your arm is not getting stuck on your paper as you're weeding away, and it's not getting all dirty and sticky and pulling your arm hairs out. No one wants to deal with that. That's no fun at all. So start in the opposite corner of what hand preference you are. So I'm right-handed, so I always start in the left corner and then peel back. So another tip that I like to recommend is if you're doing text, always remove your voids and cavities first. That really helps you see the outlines of your wording. So when you start weeding away like a fancy script font, there's a lot of loopies and circles and little voids and cavities that can be removed, and that'll help you see where your tails are connecting to your next letter. So that's a helpful tip when you're doing something with a lot of font. Something else that could be helpful when weeding is to keep a little tissue box around to catch all your scraps. If you don't have that, then you could just use a scrap piece of adhesive vinyl to catch all your little odds and ends that get stuck on your weeding tool. So as I'm weeding, I can take my little pieces of scrap and just stick it to that little remnant piece of vinyl that's right on my surface beside me. And that's going to help keep your workspace decluttered and clean, and you're not going to have little adhesive bits getting stuck to you the whole time you're weeding. There's nothing more annoying than trying to get those little odds and ends off and then them getting stuck on your design, right? And coming up to my last few tips. Take your time. In the beginning, it's going to be awkward. There's no reason to rush, because if you rush, you could miss something and then you're going to have to start all over again. And no one wants to waste all that extra time and energy on having to reprint, recut, and reweed any of your vinyl that you've already spent all this time making layers on. And last but not least, just double check your design once you think you've got it weeded, because once that design's applied on your shirt, there's no going back. And you don't want to have forgotten that one void or cavity once it's applied to your shirt. I mean, you can go back, there's ways of removing it, but it's not going to be a pretty process. So if you are interested in how to remove vinyl from an already pressed design, keep checking back, because I will make a video on that for you. There is a way to save a project that you think has been botched. It's incredibly rewarding once you know all the ins and outs of proper vinyl crafting. Vinyl crafting is fun, it's addictive, and it can be time consuming, but at least it's good time consuming, right? Because where would you rather be than crafting? It can be intimidating at first, but once you find your groove, you will be weeding like an expert in no time. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. See you guys around. Now that I'm done weeding my design, I just had to put it on a t-shirt. So stay tuned as I take that beach bod design and stick it on this men's t-shirt. You want to make sure you've properly prepared your surface before you put your vinyl on. And that's going to ensure that your vinyl lasts the full 30 wash cycle that most of it's projected to last. So this is just a cotton t-shirt, and I'm going to go ahead and place it on my press. I'm going to pre-press it to remove that wrinkles and moisture. And I like to use a heat transfer pillow. I really feel that it gives me the most even pressure for all my t-shirts, especially when working with children's t-shirts, because they have a lot of seams with close quarters. So this allows me to be able to press without worrying that I'm not getting the proper pressure in high and low spots, only to find that my vinyl is going to peel off later in the wash. And by the way, our presses should be preheating to 305 degrees because I'm using Easy Weed on this project. So I used Easy Weed Yellow, Easy Weed Beach Blue, and Easy Weed White. So now that we found our center line, I'm just going to take my Beach Bod vinyl design and place it in the center of my shirt. Another way to find, so if you've weeded away and you don't exactly know where your center line is on your vinyl, you can actually bend it like so and put a little crease. What you want to do is match up end to end of your vinyl design. So I've got the edge of his arm aligned with the flip-flop outline, and that shows me that that's the center line of my vinyl design. So I'm just going to put a little crease at the top in the carrier sheet, so that way I know when I go to place this on my shirt, that crease is going to line up with that center line that we made with the press. And there you'll have a perfect center alignment on your design. Alright, so now that the vinyl's on the shirt, we're just going to cover it with our Teflon carrier sheet. That's going to protect our heat press from getting vinyl stuck on it. Even though it has the carrier sheet to protect it, it's always wise just to use this Teflon sheet to protect your fabric if there's anything stuck on your press from last project you did that might have seeped on there. We don't want that transferring onto the fabric of your new shirt for this project that you're working on. So we have a few more minutes before my press is all the way preheated. So I'm gonna fast forward this through and I'll see you in a few seconds when this is preheated all the way. Then we're gonna go ahead and press our design. Okay, so now our press is preheated. Let's press our design. Just for 1 second since it's easy weed, so we just need to tack it. We're gonna go ahead and peel our carrier sheet while it's warm, and then we can go ahead and place our next layer onto our t-shirt. Here we go. So we're gonna cover it and repeat that 1 second tack time. And peel that layers carrier sheet and move on to our next. Look at me, I keep forgetting to use my little bucket. Perfect. All right, so onto our white. I think that looks great. Cover that one up. And now, since we did 2 1 second tacks, we want to set this for 10 seconds. That way we're not over pressing our design. We don't want our fabric to shrink underneath our vinyl as we're pressing, and that's the reason for the 1 second tacks. There we go. Now we are done with all our layers, so we can remove our final carrier sheet and we're ready to reveal our design. Now, if you really like this t-shirt design today, well, you're in luck because I made this SVG free for you guys to download and use, and make sure you go and share this with somebody that you think would love this SVG design as well. As always, thank you for tuning in. We love being your vinyl resource. Go grab that file. The link is below in our description. Make sure you're subscribing. See you guys around.